Can you hear me? No. All right, let's try that. Is that any better? Up. All right, I'm going to try again and see if that's any better. Can you hear me, Frank? I'll let you be the monitor this morning. All right. So I gave him a thumbs up, so now we can go. So welcome to Rolling Hills Church of Christ, and if you're visiting with us this morning, we're certainly glad for your presence and invite you to come back anytime that you can be here. And if you're looking for a home church, well, we certainly hope that you found one here this morning. Open the floor up to you just like we always do to see if what announcements need to be made, brought before our group this morning before we start our class. Friday, I'll start with, they did move Frances Moore, or Pee Wee as we know her, she did get to come to, what's the one? Yeah, Windsor Care, yeah. I was thinking of the one in Cedar Ridge and Cynthiana where I work, so I knew that wasn't right. But anyways, so she is in Mount Sterling. Cards and visits certainly are encouraged as she makes this transition to, living there full time. What else? Yes, ma'am. Okay. And his name is Tom Godby? Okay. 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 Mr. Tom Godby, who is her grandfather, is 103, she said, and is he still in the hospital this morning? Okay. Okay, had an infection in his foot. Where's he live at? In Somerset, down Pulaski County. All right. So, but he's been in the hospital with infection in his foot, okay? What else? Wait. I'm sorry, ma'am. I'm half deaf here, so I got to get closer to you than that. All right, go ahead.
My mother, she's 91. She's been sick.
Okay. All right. And what's her name?
Alma.
Alma Reuter. Okay, 91-year-old. She's been sick. She home or in the hospital?
She's at the nursing home.
Okay. All right, the nursing home. Anybody else?
Well, now, our daughter, Alicia, that was just with us last week, broke her nose on Thursday.
Oh, she fall?
She looked bad.
Did she fall?
She ran
she-
into a glass wall.
Oh, okay. Yeah, okay. All right. So but she's okay? Oh, I'm sure. Yeah. Okay. Broke her nose. And I'm sure she looks like she was in a tremendous fight this morning. All right. Who else? What else? Okay, still have a lot of food bowls where food was brought, and they're back in the kitchen back there. So please remember to go back there and see if you got one back there. Anything else? Mike, if you lead us in a prayer, please. Amen. All right, as you turn to Luke chapter 6, and we're going to go back and address verse 27 just a little bit there in that section right there. I will tell you something did bad happen to me just when I got here today. For about 3 years, I've had something over on Mike Donaldson. About 3 years ago, he jumped out of his car, and Nancy had to go park it. So I've always kidded him about that. It wasn't supposed to work like that. So this morning, of course, I run up here, and I was running behind, and I told Dee Dee, I said, I hope Mike Donaldson's not standing out front. Sure enough, who was standing by the door? Mike Donaldson. So we're even now. So we're both rascals, you know. She had to go park the car this morning. So I'll leave Mike alone now. So anyways, all in good fun. We are in Luke chapter 6 in verse 27. We talked a little bit at the end of our class 2 weeks ago today. And we talked about maybe how difficult it was. I don't know if you had a chance to study a little more about this. When you really study about this part of the sermon, there is tremendous discussion, debate, exactly, you know, how this should be adhered to. Brother Carmichael said 2 weeks ago that this is unnatural for us. Would you agree to that? Yeah, I would too, and I think you would too, because most of us are justice seekers is one of the terms that's used. What's a justice seeker? Is that a turn the other cheek person, a justice seeker? No, that's right. Yeah, you want to get back, right? You're a justice seeker. That wasn't fair, right? And is that what Christ is talking about here? Is this justice seeking right here? When we start in verse 27? Not even close, is it? Matter of fact, it's the exact opposite. And it's opposite of what he's saying here. So let's go back in verse 27 here. We read in Matthew, you know, what the last 2 weeks ago we read about what the two greatest commandments was. What's the, you know, in Matthew, what does it say? The first commandment is to love who? To love God. And what's the second greatest commandment? To love who? Yeah, your neighbor. And now we're going to talk about these neighbors and these people right here, okay? Let's read quickly, and we'll get down to verse 31, a very important verse. It says, and this is, remember, this is Jesus talking to his disciples here. He says, but I tell you who hear me, love your enemies. Do good to those who hate you. Bless those who curse you. Pray for those who mistreat you. If someone strikes you on one cheek, turn to him the other also. If someone takes your cloak, do not stop him from taking your tunic. Give to everyone who asks you, and if anyone takes what belongs to you, do not demand it back. Do to others as you would have them do to you. Now, when you read that, we think, well, you know, that's exactly right, isn't it? You know, but when you really drill down into that and you really study that, that's one of the hardest things that the Lord commands us to do. It's not hard. Dan, do you have a problem not murdering somebody last night? No, right? You don't. And Cindy, did you steal anything this week? No, you didn't, right? I mean, so see, those things are easy, right? You know, did you worship any other God this week? No, right? You know, those things are a lot easier, right? You know, and Mikey, well, no, I won't go there. But anyways, so there's things that's easier to do that the Lord commands us to do, and then there's things that's not. And boy, this one right here is a tough one, isn't it? It is. It's hard. And, you know, and one thing that we tried to define 2 weeks ago is who our enemies are. Who are our enemies? If we don't know who our enemies are, we can't love them, right? So who are our enemies? And it can be a multitude of different people, right? It really can. Yeah. Those are your enemies. So, I mean, when you look back to that, I mean, most of us can probably honestly say that we don't have a lot of just true one-on-one enemies. Would you agree? We have detractors, what I call detractors, right? You know, we do, especially, you know, if you profess your religion and you live it and people see it, right? But I mean, as far as just somebody just saying, you know, Jerry, I just hate your guts. I mean, there's very few of us that probably has those type people, right? And but as a group, as Christians as a whole, do we have people who truly hate us and feel like they're our enemies? Yes or no? Do we? Do they not disbelieve everything we believe? Dan, you shaking your head. Is there any of those people out there? Yeah, sure there is. Absolutely. Sure there is. I think, and I go back to you, I think you said that maybe on your Facebook page you understand maybe there's a detractor or two out there, right? You know, so it is. But we have to identify who our group of enemies are and who they are and how we go about this. And now, the natural thing that Jerry was talking about 2 weeks ago, you know, and we're going to, as we get down through it, we're going to figure out who it's easy to love, right? Who it's easy to do things with. It's easy for Jerry and I to sit down and have lunch together, right? We love each other. We like each other. We have things in common. And this is not what we're talking about here at all, is it? It's a hard thing to do. Let's drop all the way down to verse 31 here, and it says, do to others as you would have them do to you. I heard my father say that from the time I can remember until the time he died, okay? And I think he did a pretty good job of living that. But if you think about that, really think about that, that would solve a lot of problems, wouldn't it? If I treated every single person I come in contact just exactly like I wanted to be, you feeling this? You get this? I mean, if I treated everyone, every single person like I wanted to be treated, it would solve a lot of our problems that we have in this whole world. Yes, sir.
And imagine if you couple that with loving your neighbor as yourself. Treat people as you want to be treated and love people as you love yourself.
Yeah.
Man, you're talking about solving problems.
Yeah. Probably wouldn't need no policeman, would we? Probably wouldn't need no policeman. Did you hear what he said? He said, if you couple that with love your neighbor as yourself and do unto others as you have them do to you, this would be a great place to live, wouldn't it? Do you think we fall short of that pretty often?
Compare these school shootings and shootings on the street, things like that, and so many times there's no reason, they just do it. And if they had this love your neighbor thing in their hearts, these things wouldn't happen.
I agree. And then if it falls back on a very personal level too, doesn't it? Falls back on a very personal level. Every time that you're in contact with someone, if you could think like that all the time, right? If you could think like that, wouldn't be very many arguments, would there? Disagreements? There'd be things that we'd still disagree on, but if we always had those two things that Jerry said in our forward way of thinking, I'm not sure we get there very often. At least when I look out and I see what's going on in our world. Comments on that?
Verse 27 where it says, do good to those who hate you. That is used a lot of situations. If you're nice to somebody who's ugly to you, I've had to turn around and start laughing and apologize.
Yes.
I have not do that too. But you know, it takes a lot of the power out of a volatile situation. If you're just nice, if you just do good, whether they do good or not.
Right. Right. He did. And how easy is that, though? Right? I mean, when you're face to face with somebody and going at it, you know, and how easy is that? It's not, is it? But was that what Jesus told us to do, though? That's the thing we got to look back on here, right? I mean, he explained this to us. He's told us what we should do, and you know, and he also says that we should pray for these people. I don't know about you. I have a hard time praying for those group of people. Maybe I shouldn't say that in front of you, but I do, you know. I told you my example was, and it's a very national, big umbrella example, is there's a group of politicians in Washington, D.C. that just makes my skin, just burns my hide every time they speak. It makes no difference what group it is. You probably might know, but they just set me on fire, you know. And I mean, I clench my fist and I say, "What planet are you from? You know, where do you get this thinking process at? It has nothing aligned with the ethics and the code of our country." But anyways, I do now. I can tell you that since I've been studying this again, that I do pray for them every night. It's hard for me, you know, and I even feel just a little sheepish when I do it because I ain't got over to this love side yet, okay, you know? But it's hard, isn't it? I mean, it really is. I mean, you know, I mean, it really and deep in my heart, I shouldn't admit this, but I just wish that group of people just kind of slide on, you know, go away, you know? I mean, that's the way I feel. And, I have been trying to practice exactly what the Bible tells me to do here, you know, and it's not easy. It's unnatural. And
First time that you pray for them, yeah, it's hard.
yeah,
But each time it's easier and easier, and so it just becomes natural to you to want goodwill for them.
right, and it is. And like I said, we could talk about this for hours because there is just all right in our own brotherhood how this works and how this functions and all the different Greek words that goes along with it, you know, and all the nouns and adjectives. But really, it comes back to an attitude that we got to have. That's what it comes back to. We got to have the right attitude and the correct attitude to be able to pray for those people and try to love those people. And just like Jerry said, you know, Christ wants us to take action, not just talk about it, right? And we'll talk more about that in a few minutes. Any more comments? Do to others as you would have them do to you. If we can remember that this week while we're in business. Verse 32. A new thought here. He says, if you love those who love you, what credit is that to you? He says, even sinners love those who love them. And if you do good to those who are good to you, what credit is that to you? He says, even sinners do that. And if you lend to those from whom you expect repayment, what credit is that to you? Even sinners lend to sinners, expecting to be repaid in full. Verse 35 says, but love your enemies, do good to them, and lend to them without expecting to get anything back. And then he says, then your reward will be great, and you will be sons of the Most High, because he is kind to the ungrateful and the wicked. Be merciful just as your Father is merciful. So he continues on, doesn't he? He's explaining just what we mentioned just a little bit there. He said, this part, the people that you love, that you like, you get along with, he said, that's easy. He said, even sinners do that. And he says that in three different times, right? He says, if you love those who love you, he said, what credit is that to you? Pretty straight talk, isn't it? He says, what credit is that to you? He said, even sinners do that. And then he goes on to say, he says, if you do good to those who are good to you, what credit is that to you? He said, even sinners do that. So, you know, we're comparing two different groups here, right? You know, he says, in other words, he says, anybody can do this. But he said, you're my children. He said, you are Christians. And he says, your level of love is different. And he said, the expectation is way different here, isn't it? And at the end, in verse 35, let's go with verse 35. There was a lot of discussion on this, a lot of good reading. And it says, but love your enemy and do good to them and lend to them without expecting to get anything back. What's that mean to you? What are we lending here? Is he talking about money? Is he talking about anything else? And that's the way I see it too, you know. I mean, it could just be anything. It could be taking care of somebody. It could be lending their money. You could go help this person do something, right? I mean, there's all kinds of things lending here. It kind of amazed me about the great discussion about whether this was money or not. But that's the way I see it too. That's why I asked you how you saw it. But the best part of that verse is, it says, then your reward will be great. What is the great reward that we're all trying to receive? What is it? Yeah, go to heaven, right? And that's what he says. He says, and you will be sons of the Most High. You want to be there? Do you want to be one of the sons of the Most High? Yeah, absolutely we do, don't we? And then he says, because he is kind to the ungrateful and the wicked. Who's he? Who are we talking about here? Yeah, absolutely. And he says, be merciful just as your Father is merciful. Yeah, to strive to be like our daddy, right? Yeah. Right. And your reward will be great. Yep. And have a great reward. And that's what we should all strive to do. So, is this important, what he's talking about here? Well, yeah, it is, isn't it? Very important. Verse 37, he continues on here. He says, do not judge, and you will not be judged. Talked the rest of the day about that, couldn't we? Do not judge, and you shall not be judged. Are we guilty? Do we judge people? Dan's nodding his head.
Maybe we're not doing it out loud, but we're judging in our minds.
Yep. Let me give you my example. Whenever I see a person that's all tattooed up and a big nose ring in them and, scary jewelry and, I have prejudged that person, right? Now, you're smiling. Maybe you've been there too. I don't know. I won't ask you, But I mean, I have prejudged that person. I am on full alert for some reason. Okay? I prejudged that person. I work in a bank, as you know, and I get to see all kinds of people on a weekly basis, right? And I have some of those in Cynthia too. And all those people are not exactly the way that I had them put in my brain, okay? So, but I have already prejudged that person when they walk in the bank. Let me give you an example. This week, a lady comes in, her hair was just all frizzed up, and it's 10:30 in the morning, pajama bottoms on, and she looked unkept. Is that the word? Is that I'm looking for? She wasn't made up. Whatever the word is, okay? And I judged that person just immediately. I said, well, there's somebody that's, lazy and not working, and she comes to my office. One of the ladies brings her to my office. She needs to see the guy at the bank, and she comes in there. And little did I know that she was in a car wreck the night before, and she lost her purse and her checkbook, and she needed some help. I felt about that big, right? Right? She'd been in a car wreck. But we do it all the time, folks. I think we're all the same. I mean, if I'm wrong, you tell me different. Am I wrong? I don't hear nobody saying no. So what does it say here? In verse 37, verse 37, he says, "Do not judge, and you will not be judged." I just told you I fail miserably, right? Yeah, and I think a lot of us do. I won't say all of us, because Miss Norma's in here, so I'm not gonna throw all of us in one can there.
I met up with a really, really nice young lady about 2 weeks ago, and she had a tattoo, and it was down here on her arm, and I thought it was a cat.
A what? A cat? Okay.
About that pretty cat on her arm.
Yeah.
And she said, that's a fox.
A fox. Okay.
And it had fox
Yeah, okay.
And
All right.
I'm glad I didn't say anything bad.
Yeah.
Because that was a nice.
Yeah, that's right. And those are generational things for us, right? I mean, when I was 20 years old, there was only tattoos you see was usually on military guys. That when they come home from the military, that's at least that's what's in my brain, And as we know, I mean, probably half the people I work with, the ladies that I work with, have tattoos. And, a lot of people have tattoos. But that's just a generational thing. And just like, I described that person that I was uncomfortable with, the nose ring and the tattoo and the teardrops underneath their face tattooed in, And it's just me. And maybe you have some of those same people, thoughts, that the people that you've prejudged. And I told you, I do that all the time. Let's read on. And it says, do not condemn, and you will not be condemned. Forgive, and you will be forgiven. Give, and it will be given to you. A good measure, pressed down, shaken together, and running over, will be poured into your lap, for with the measure you use, it will be measured to you. All right, let's go back. So, the do not judge part. I want to do a comparison here back to that. Is it easier not to judge someone, or is it easier to love your enemies? He's told us to do both of these things, right? Which one's easier? To do, yeah. Awful quiet. It's easier not to obey that command, you're saying? Easier to judge. Okay. All right. They're both hard, right? We agree with that? Both those commandments are hard, right? And I don't want to keep throwing myself underneath the bus because nobody else is jumping in here with me, but, they're hard. And at night when I lay down, I think about these kind of events in the Bible. And I told you it was easy. Dan said it was easy. He didn't kill nobody yesterday, right? You agree that's easy? For most of us, right? But when it comes to what we're studying here, this gets really difficult. And those are the things that, I don't want to tell you that we're failures here because I don't feel that way today. I don't. When I lay down at night and you lay down at night and you say, Lord, forgive me of my sins, I think this is one of the things that we're talking about here, that we don't get it done right every day. But we got to try every day to get it right. And that's what's important. And I don't want that. I don't want you to think that I come in here to beat you down because we can't get there, okay? Because we work to get there every single day.
I think, and for me probably, sometimes it's easier to judge somebody else, more harshly than we do ourselves. I don't know why that is, but it's just, we can see something somebody else has done wrong, and it's like, I can't believe they done that. Yet I might have done something just the same way, but I forgive myself because I know what I've been through, and it really bothers me. And
Right.
I think I'm not do that.
Right. And you're a few verses ahead of me, and we'll come back to that, okay? Well, you're just a few verses ahead of me right there, okay? Yes, sir?
These things are doable, or he wouldn't have told us to do it.
Absolutely.
They're doable. We don't want to paint the picture that you won't ever get this right. Because sometimes you will. I have this little thing that I learned when I was young, and I don't always get it right. But start everybody off at 100%, and when they go from there to a C. I learned that when I was about 15, and I really tried to do that. But I don't always get it right. But it is doable.
I don't know if you heard Jerry or not, but it's an excellent point. He didn't give us something to do in the Bible that we couldn't do, right? He wouldn't have told us that if he knew we couldn't get there. Now, is it perfect every day? Nope. Or do we have to work on it? Do we have to work on it getting better every day? Yes, we do. And when we fail and recognize that we fail, then we pray about it and we try to get better, right? And that's what we're talking about here. So, me too. I don't want you to ever feel like that I'm telling you this is something that we can't get done. Yes, ma'am. Who raised their hand? You know. Yeah, well, I guess you're off the hook there. You didn't feel bad about them, you know. I mean, I said, I think you're off the hook there. I don't think you judged them. I mean, you just wonder why. So, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and most of us men would be jealous because we can't grow no hair anymore, right? So, yeah. So, anyways, good point, though. There you go. All right. All right, let's move on. All right, and that's what it says. Verse 38 says, he says, give and it will be given to you. A good measure pressed down, shaken together and running over will be poured into your lap. For with the measure you use, it will be measured to you. Now, does anybody remember what this last verse means in this? This. Right. Yep. Yep. Say that again now. We judge others on their actions. And we judge ourselves on our intentions. Yeah, that's really good. That's really good. Who told you that? Your grandmother? Oh, I'm just asking. I mean, it's just something you heard. Okay. All right. All right. All right. Yeah, that's really good. And, you know, can we do that, though? Sometimes, yeah. Sometimes, yeah. That's right. That's right. The last verse there, it's actually talking about literally. I mean, you know what this is based on is an agriculture theme, and back in this day, they actually had these big robe-like things, and when they got grain, they poured the grain over into that, and they filled it up. So what he's saying here, and he says in good measure, he said, and then not only when you pour that in there, but press it down. You know, so we can get more in there, right? And that's exactly what he's saying. And after that, he said, and then shake it together so it'll shake down even further so we can even get more grain in there. But it comes back to what Cindy says, and he says, it will run over into your lap. What's going to run over? What's he talking about, Cindy? What's going to run over here? Huh? Blessings, good things, right? And he says, in a measure, is some kind of measure, whether it be a foot, a cubic, a pound. That's what a measure is here. So the last thing he says, for the measure you use, it will be measured to you. So in other words, you know, if you give a little bit, what are you going to get back? A little bit, right? You give a lot, you're going to get a lot back. And that's actually the way he sums this up. So two things to me that what we've been talking about starting in verse 27 is, and like I say, we can talk about this for days. I mean, we just can. I mean, it goes on and on, the discussion does on this. But two things. First of all, you got to realize that, that we're talking about love, and we're also talking about attitude in our own hearts here. If we got the right attitude, and if we got the love in our heart for other people, like we've been instructed, that this becomes a lot easier and a lot easier to do and a lot easier to achieve. And before we leave, I do want to say one more time, just what Jerry said, this is doable, this is obtainable. Maybe it'll never be perfect, okay? Maybe it'll never be perfect. Right. 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 And you got to have that Christ-like attitude, right? That's right. Any comments before we move on? No comments? Verse 39. He says, can a blind man lead a blind man? Will they not both fall into a pit? Let's stop right there. What's he talking about here? A blind man leading a blind man. If Mike and I go downtown today when we're blindfolded, we can't see, and they put us on Main Street and we're holding hands, what's going to happen to us? Going to get hurt, right? We're either going to get run over, we're going to fall down, it's not going to end up good, right? It's not. So what is he talking about here? Who is this blind here we're talking about? Okay, what else?
Parable to explain what he just taught. He just taught about who and does and have to give judgment, be not judged to give, but it be measured back to you. And he said, look, I'm going to look at the story in parable to tell you. For you try to get through life without doing these things and still try to teach people about Christ and try to show Christ, but you don't show these attitudes, it's like a blind man leading the blind.
Right. And it does, and that's what just what Jerry said. It goes back talking about what Jesus has told him. He says you can't do these things, if you got a bad teacher or a false teacher here. And he goes on to say here, now he's going to talk about it. He says a student is not above his teacher, but everyone who is fully trained will be like his teacher. What's that mean? What's he talking about? Remember, he's tying this back to what he's already told his disciples here. I can't teach you Greek, can I? I don't know Greek, right? If you told me, said, you need to teach me the Greek language, guess what? You're out of luck. And that's exactly what he's talking about here. You can only learn what the teacher knows, right? Yeah.
And so I feel good about myself because I'm doing better than her.
Right.
Well, we compare ourselves to Christ and grow. Let him be our teacher. And we'll be able to do those things he's just talked about. But we can't say it's not natural because it's not natural. But it is spiritual. It's like God.
Right. Okay. What else? What else about that? That's an interesting one-liner there, isn't it? It really is. And that's what he's telling them. He says, he said a student is not above his teacher. And number one, you can't be because you can't learn no more than what someone is going to teach. And during this time, I mean, there wasn't a lot of manuscripts. So, there wasn't a Bible on every corner, in the back of every pew, laying in the back of two in the back of my truck seat most weeks, right? So the availability of the truth in the Word wasn't out there at the time. So how was this being taught? How was God's Word being taught? Yeah, that's right. By the Word of God. And that's what he's telling his disciples here. Absolutely. And I got wrote down here, I says, and I wrote, no person can teach what they do not know. Right? None of us can. Just like I told you, if you want me to teach you Greek, you got luck. I don't know nothing about Greek. It says a student cannot learn more from a teacher than the teacher already knows himself. So it was important. To learn the truth here and to seek the truth in what we're doing. Mike, say what you said about this earlier. In verse 41, this is going to apply exactly what you said. We excuse ourselves sometimes, don't we? Because you can look at me and see my faults a lot easier and clearer than you can see your own, right? Let's read verse 41, and exactly what Mike's talking about here. He says, why do you look at that speck of sawdust in your brother's eye and pay no attention to the plank in your own eye? Now, that's just a little bit of humor, isn't it? You know, how many of you have had a plank in your eye? None of us, right? But he's just using just a little bit of humor to drive this point home. In verse 42, he says, how can you say to your brother, brother, let me take that speck out of your eye when you yourself fail to see the plank in your own eye? He says, you hypocrites, first take the plank out of your eye, and then you will see clearly to remove the speck from your brother's eye. So in other words, what's Christ saying here? You got to do what for yourself? You got to get your own house in order, right? You got to take care of your own sins, your own shortcomings, before we can ever go out. And just like Mike said, it's easier for me to see, for us to see what others, our shortcomings are, than it is to look at our own lives and be self-reflective and take care of what's wrong in our own lives. Comments about that? I'm not going to get... Any more comments? You're awful quiet this morning. Okay. In verse 43, it says, a good tree does not yield bad fruit, and a bad tree does not yield good fruit. He says, you know a tree by the fruit that it yields. You do not pick figs or grapes from thorn bushes. The good man has good things in his heart, so from his heart he does good things. The evil man has evil things in his heart, so from his heart he does evil things. The mouth speaks from what it is in the heart. And I did switch over to reading now the easy English version of the Bible now instead of the NIV. What's that mean? What's that mean to you? A good tree and a bad tree. What's he talking about here? Know what kind of tree it is by the kind of fruit that's on it? Yeah? Okay. But is he comparing good and bad here? People? Is that what he's comparing? You know, are we bearing good fruit? And that's what he's saying. We will know that. And a person who produces good fruit is things that is shareable, that is good, right? That's usable. Not really talking about a fig or a strawberry or, strawberries aren't on trees, but apple or pear. But, we're talking about things that people do. Me and you. You know, are you producing good fruit? Are you producing bad? And that's exactly what that means. A good person does good things, right? Or bears good fruit. And this comes from where? Inside of us, right? I think most of us in this room likes to do good things. You agree? I think so. Most of us strive to do those good things. That is Christ-like. That is God-like. Do good things. I don't think nobody gets up in the morning and says, I'm going to get up this morning and I'm going to be mean. I'm going to be short with people, and I'm going to say, bad things to people. Does anybody get up like that? I sure hope not, right? No, I don't think so. But that's what we're talking about. Good fruit and bad fruit. Any questions on that?
I had a friend tell me a long time ago, we were kind of having this kind of discussion, and I can see right now where we were. We were in a penny store in Covington, and he said that we all can't be fruit pickers. And that has stuck with me all those years. That sometimes we're so judgmental that we tend to become fruit pickers
Yes.
when we ought to just kind of see what's going on.
Right. Yep. One more short parable here and we'll be done. It's the wise and the foolish builders. One of my favorite stories You know how you are when you're little. There's little things stick with you. You know, I'm 54 years old, so that's probably been at least 47, 8 years ago. Sue Myers. I don't know if y'all remember Sue Myers or not, but this was one of the lessons I remember she taught in Sunday school at Queen Street. When you go in the side door, it was the first room on the right. That was our room where she taught us. But this was one of them, and she had pictures up on the chalkboard about the wise and the foolish builders. Verse 46 says, he says, "You call me Lord, Lord, but you do not do what I say. Some people come to hear my words. They do what I say. This is what they are like. They are like a man who built a house, who dug a deep hole, and he built on the rock. When a flood came, the river rushed against the house, but the flood could not shake the house. This was because the man built the house on the rock. Some people come to hear my words, but they do not obey what I say. They are like a man who built his house on the ground. He did not fix his house to the rock. When a flood came, the water struck the house. Immediately, the house fell down, and the water destroyed it completely." The first in verse 46 there, when it says that you call me Lord, Lord, when you do that is you accept him totally, right? All of his authority, which means that you obey. And that's what we're talking about, the two houses here as we go forward here. So it's based upon more action-based here, what he's talking about. It's easy for us to give lip service to anything, right? Truly, it is. But we show how we love Christ, and we show that we are Christians by the actions that we do. So when we talk about the two houses, I mean, you know, when there's a great storm, and the guy that built his house upon the rock, and it stood, right? It stood the test. And same thing, we're talking about Christ here. We're talking about, you know, if we have that relationship with Christ, and when those storms come, we'll survive. We will make it. On the other hand, the house was built on top of the ground, so it didn't have no foundation, did it? And so when the storms of life come, it's really easy to get knocked down. It's really easy to lose that relationship with our Lord. I think that's our second light. I believe this is my last Sunday. Is that correct? This is my 3 months is up. And I don't know who's next Sunday, but we'll see. Thank you. I've enjoyed it.